But do you think, James, that this economic crisis will overcome the cult mentality that exists among so many of these people on the left?
I mean, people don't just shake out of cults, man. I mean, that's Leon Festinger, right? He infiltrates the UFO cult. The UFO doesn't come. What a big surprise. There's no UFO. And then what did people do? They said, well, it came spiritually and like turned around because, I mean, so the people who are fully brainwashed by this, they need help. And I mean it. It's really not going to be good for them. What will happen, though, is that most of the people that are supporting it, most of the people that are putting their black square on their profile or whatever, aren't that committed. They're not actually fully bought into the cult. They're confused. And when things start to shake, they're going to start to see that this isn't what they thought it was. And a lot of them will start to come back to reality. When you break the active measure, when you break the psyop, when you turn off the television, people's brains start to readjust to the reality in front of them, and this starts to happen when reality shocks them back. Most of them, and enough for the key word I said earlier, is a critical mass of people. That's where you're going to get this uprising Steve's talking about. This is when you have a critical mass of people who say, nope, no more. Then it's going to be, everything's going to start to change, and it's going to change very quickly. We have to keep pressing to get to that point. We have to keep making it more clear with the see through the smoke grenade, the flashbang. You have to keep doing this. But wokeness is an increasing liability for them, and because of people like you, it's going to keep being an increasing liability for them, and they're not going to be able, they're going to try to get rid of it as hard as they can when it gets to that point.
But James, it's not the TV anymore. It's big tech social media.
I mean, that was an emblem.
And just a few days ago, I know, I'm not trying to correct
It was
you.
a metaphor.
I'm trying to make a bigger statement here because just a few days ago, we finally got the receipts that it was the intelligence agencies that were pretty much controlling big tech social media.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think this is something new. I think this was happening for a very long time. And when you're able to shape social media, you're able to shape the minds of the people.
Oh, yeah.
And this is why since the onset of Barack Obama, I was like, this is the beginning of a larger divide and conquer agenda. We saw the destruction of Occupy Wall Street. We've seen the rhetoric change on, of course, the mainstream media. But on social media, it was left versus right, black versus white, old versus old versus young, male versus female. We saw this weaponized in echo chambers. We saw this weaponized with algorithms. And I do believe that intelligence agencies had a play on this, engineering this larger conflict where we are right now, talking about pronouns and genders rather than, holy crap, there's not going to be enough money to pay for heat or food soon. So that's an issue that I think really needs to be honed in on.
The open secret in Silicon Valley is these social media companies are almost impossible to make profitable because of the server costs and the staff costs. So the question that needs to be answered is, did the intelligence agencies enter during the venture round of Facebook?
I think so, especially with Q-Intel, especially with a lot of the other organizations that invested a lot of the money there, especially when it came to Alphabet and Google, getting all those contracts, getting all those lucrative deals, getting all those tax incentives, get all that money back. They unfairly were able to go to the top because they were connected with all the intelligence agencies that brought them there. It wasn't an accident.
This is the question I had about Twitter that I was mentioning early on with Elon Musk. Did he see government involvement and then say, oh no? But the bigger question then when we start realizing with the Twitter leaks, the Twitter files, that the FBI actually paid Twitter. And granted, it was like 3.8 million or something. What is that like?
No. But you got to count the vaccine advertisements. You got to count the Go Army ads. You got to count all the federal government capital flows because they'll bundle those together. That's hundreds of millions of dollars.
But so here's the point I wanted to make. The other day, it was Elon who responded to Ian Miles Chong, who said, in order for Twitter to be profitable, it has to become a platform for creators of video and writing. And Elon said something like true. And I say, no, that's not true. I'm sorry. I mean, it's somewhat true. You do need to have a good platform that people can use, you can monetize. But right now, we're not only in this convention center, we're on YouTube. YouTube's subsidized. YouTube, the cost of live streaming this show, we could never make enough money off the show to actually pay for. So it's a weird situation where the big tech social media companies are subsidized, and I've always wondered, where does that money come from?
There is a theory of, remember when Facebook went public and they had this meteoric crash? I mean, were they trying to make certain investors disappear in a public market of an exchange, and it didn't exactly go right?
Interesting. So you think like...
I'm not thinking, I'm just asking a question. It was the most fumbled IPO in modern history, and you got to wonder, that's also the company that is probably in bed with every intelligence agency. And it was an IPO that didn't just miss by $10. You remember, it was supposed to debut at like $50 a share and cratered to $18. We were like, what happened? I wonder why. They have the best banks doing their IPO.
Remember, the creation of these companies come out of the top engineering schools in the country, right? The top engineers, the top computer scientists, at Stanford, at MIT, and all of those universities are essentially adjuncts to the national security state, okay? They're all underwritten. The universities today are virtually underwritten by the US government and federal funds. Almost all of that is tied back to some sort of national security state. So the engineers themselves, the engineering, has all been underwritten. When these things first start, the venture capital companies that put it in, the hedge fund companies, most of these have strong relationships to the federal government in the national security state, okay? This is all one piece of a whole cloth, okay? And then you talk about the contracts and how the revenue goes and all that. It all comes through either the biomedical security state or the national security medical state, which we've kind of seen the convergence of during the CCP COVID-19 virus, right? So these are all adjuncts. And by the way, Facebook is going to be 10 times or 20 times worse than Twitter, okay? Because the platform's bigger. And you're going to see more and more involvement, and you're going to see more and more involvement in this. They actually say, the people there in Dorsey, that this was a government-controlled operation. Twitter is a crime scene, and it is an intelligence op, okay? From day one, from the core of its being, at the very engineering schools where it started. And that's what I'm saying, the administrative state. To break this, to take this out root and branch is a 10, 20, or 30-year project where you're on it every day, okay? Because it's taken them since essentially World War II, right, to build the national security state. And this is not going to be easy, but it's everywhere, right? And it's particularly in our universities. That's why the universities, the railheads of wokeness right now, right? The great universities of the University of Texas, you can look at Arizona State right here, right? These are the railheads of wokeness. Why? Because they're living off government money. They are adjuncts. They're just outposts. They're the new weapons labs of Sandia and Lawrence Livermore, right? The old nuclear power weapons labs, the new weapons labs are social media weapons created by these universities in conjunction with the national security in the biomedical security state.
So we saw that video from Project Veritas a while back. This employee saying, I work, 4 hours a week? He's getting paid 6 figures. We see Elon Musk come in and he's like, these people are doing nothing and they're getting paid all this money. And I think about that, and I think about this old thing that I read where the reason why there's so many people named Smith is because when wars were breaking out, the blacksmiths were spared the war. They wouldn't go fight, and if they were captured, they'd be spared because they could make weapons. The people who made the weapons were extremely valuable, and the kings and the rulers would keep them comfortable so they could keep producing powerful tools for them. And then you look at these big tech companies, completely overpaid with money, who knows where it comes from. They barely work. Why? They're making the modern weapons.
Well, we should take a quick step back and say, well, why would they do this, right? The weapons, why are we making social media weapons? Turns out, this thing Charlie was talking about a minute ago, my favorite paper criticizing what's called social emotional learning, which is this whole brainwashing program the left is replacing education with. That's a can of worms we don't have to get into right now. But there's this paper that criticizes it from the left. It's my favorite paper that criticizes SEL, is a paper written from an old school critical Marxist. And so what he writes is that the purpose of this kind of narrative control, he calls the paper psychodata. And what's most valuable about you to this regime is your data. Why? Because they can control you with it. We don't need $1 backed by gold or oil. We could have $1 backed by you giving them something that's very valuable to them, which is the data used to control you. So he says that we're talking about the algorithms, not just TV, right? The algorithms on your social media, they can feed you, they can nudge you with what they call nudge theory, how you're supposed to think, how you're supposed to feel. The goal of this entire operation with social media is to create the environment in which they can do this psychological pushing, nudging of you into different kinds of decision trees that you might not have taken otherwise, so they can control you. And this guy, Ben Williamson, he's a leftist, writes this paper saying this social emotional learning program in schools, this is what this is for. It's to gather massive amounts of data. It's to use this data to control people, to make them perfectly predictable economic consumers, perfectly controllable political subjects, and to control everybody basically completely all the time at the level of what he calls a psychocracy, a government through their psychology. So they think they're thinking for themselves, but they're thinking what the algorithm taught them to think. And you therefore don't even have freedom of thought. This is his fear of what this is what this is for. This is the kind of weapon that they want to build. This is a left-wing critique, like Charlie was predicting, would be coming down the pike. And what he says is that this is horrible and it's awful, and we have to watch out. This is a leftist saying this, and then what does he point to? He said, well, where does this come from? Who's funding it? And he's like, well, we go through it. It's very easy. The World Economic Forum is funding it. The United Nations is behind it. The World Bank is at the dead center of all of it. All of the players we're always talking about are the people that are behind this huge push, whether it's through social emotional learning in the schools, whether it's through the algorocracy, government by algorithm, through the social media. And this is, again, we come back to Elon. All of a sudden, he's just this dude. He's a rocket guy. He's going to go. Rocket Man is going to kicks Elton John off of Twitter or whatever. Rocket Man comes in, and he's going to go build new algorithms that are fun, and he has jokes, and he wants memes, and he's going to build these algorithms that are not under their control, and they freak out.
But we had I think it was Phil Labonte who was on the show, and he made a good point. He said, with Neuralink, there is going to be a chip in your brain that gives you the tiniest dopamine hit that you don't even realize when you're nudged just in the right direction. So you're a regular person living a normal life. They're not going to come out and say, get rid of all your stuff, own nothing. You're just going to sell something for cash, and it's going to feel good. And before you realize it, they are pushing everybody with this control, with this chip. Maybe it's a little far-fetched to say just right now, but that's a fear of
how is that any different than scrolling through Instagram, though?
Yeah,
exactly.
You get your hearts on your thing, right?
That's right.
You got a heart.
Yeah,
oh my God, 300 likes.
It's all dopaminergic manipulation.
And,
That's right.
And van life. Remember that big trend on YouTube, van life, where they're promoting all of these young couples who
that poor girl died doing that. Gabby something, yeah.
There was a article that we read about a woman who said, I retired at 36. And then when you read it, you realize, one, she didn't actually retire. She's still working. And two, she lives in a van. Or she's traveling on a nomadic lifestyle. Yeah, when people think of retiring, they think of they had a family, they have a house, they have a front yard, or something at least to that effect.
It's about social engineering so people accept their slavery, because throughout human history, there always was some kind of despot or psychopath trying to take over the world. And I think the really smart ones realized, hey, it takes a lot of time and effort to kill a lot of people. And I think in our modern society, what better way to take over society than, of course, have people enslave themselves? And I think that's exactly what's happening right now. And I think bullets have been replaced with tweets, bombs have been replaced with videos, and right now we are being engineered in fifth generational warfare in order to destroy the free human spirit. And that's the bigger fight that's happening right now that people need to realize more than ever.
And this is why I always say violence doesn't work, because it's something they know how to control, it's something they know how to manipulate, they know that it instills fear and is a weapon for them. That doesn't mean it's easy to combat, it just means you need to understand the weapons they're using, and it's psychological manipulation.
Yeah, you make better technology. Basically, social media is not a weapon on its face. It's a powerful force that can be weaponized, and it has been, unfortunately, by, it looks like Alphabet, Meta, Twitter, these things. But Minds, for instance, we would sit around and have ethics conversations with how addictive should we make this technology. It's 88% too much for me. I don't want people constantly on it. I want them to use it for the function that it's deserved. And
you could have made it 100%.
You can make it like an addictive, you can make it 101, something that someone's never even seen. It's more powerful than what you thought could be the most addictive substance on earth. It's not ethical. We don't take information at Minds. We don't want your data because it can be scraped. The key, I think, is open source code, so you know what the code is telling people, and you want access to your data, and you want to limit, you want to opt in when you want to opt in. You don't want them to harvest your metrics.
You're basically saying power to the people.
And I think people should own their own data and make money off of it.
Let me contribute some optimism, though, because the Neuralink thing is real, the manipulation of people, and people are looking for hope. And one piece...
People just screamed graphene, by the way. Just a heads up. Sorry.
I said graphene. That'll be the next hour.
That's Ian's thing. Ian's thing is graphene. Sorry, I apologize.
Want to talk about graphene?
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.